listening to the Creator Mindset Podcast, episode number 4.
Welcome to the Creator Mindset Podcast, where artists, performers, and entrepreneurs share knowledge that will kick off your career and take you to the next level. Turn your vision into reality with your host, Ariane Lianza Hines.
In this episode, I interview Maureen Edgecomb, who shares her inspirational story. She talks about intuition, how she became an artist, and how to overcome the challenges that come along with the way of an artist's path. I created a 7-video series where I share my 7 most valuable steps to keep shining with your voice and create abundance in your life. You can download it at www.arianelianzahines.com/4. And now let's hear Maureen's story. As a creative consultant, Maureen Edgecomb supports and guides others to develop their full creative potential, design their ideal work environment, and bring their amazing work out into the world where it belongs. She has published several feature magazine articles and written and illustrated children's picture books, including the popular Gigi and Jack children's book series. She has been featured on PBS for children's art appreciation and has written commercials for television. Clients include Cats Magazine, Caesars Entertainment, Hampton's Art Stamps, among others. After several years of writing, publishing, and illustrating, she continues to produce her work as well as help others transition from their corporate business or other left-brained world to realizing their dreams of a creative life. Maureen left the world of academia, where she was a professor and lecturer in English, art, and humanities, in order to pursue her lifelong dream of producing her creative work full-time. Maureen, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Ariane. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you so much for being on my first series podcast. And I just met Maureen virtually a couple of days ago. A common friend introduced us, thinking we would click, and she was right. Maureen's journey is not a straightforward one, and today I asked her to share her story with you because her story is inspiring for anyone who would like to live a creative career. So how did you become an artist, Maureen?
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks so much, Ariane, for the lovely introduction as well. Well, I was pretty lucky. I had parents as a child that really supported me in my art. In fact, I like to think it's all their idea because they got, maybe I was a problem child, I don't know, but they got me busy with art. And I loved it. I had very supportive parents. And when I got to be about 12 or 13, I had enjoyed my children's books so much when I was little. I loved them. It gave me that love of books, and I decided that I wanted to write and illustrate children's books. So my parents heard me, and so they put me in private art school when I was 12. I was so lucky. And then in high school, of course, I studied art. I got involved with the art community, the art club in high school and all of that. And then when I started college, I started at a community college that I absolutely loved, and I remember the very first day and my very first class, I walked in and there was this wonderful looking, very artistic woman professor, and we sat down and she started introducing herself, and she said, you know, that she was a well-known artist, and I didn't realize that when I signed up for the course, but she said, yes, she just got back from traveling all summer in Africa and doing her work and doing her artwork in Africa. And now she was back teaching school for the season. She did that every summer, and her work was in a gallery. And I thought to myself, how cool is that? If you have to have a job, this is the ideal job for an artist, because you can be teach. And I knew I wanted to teach too. So I loved teaching, and I thought, you can teach all academic year, and when summer comes, you can take off, you can travel, you can do your work, you get refreshed. Wow, what a great life that would be. So that was my first influence. But unfortunately, after about my first month of school, I had to drop out because my father passed away and we could no longer afford the college or afford for me to go to college. So I had to drop out, yeah. And of course, I would help my mom. We were a very close-knit family. And so I went to work, doing odd jobs and all that. And then after a few years, I actually decided to go back. I got smart and I thought, well, I learned dictation and keyboarding in high school, so naturally I could be an executive assistant. So I started getting those kinds of jobs. And then one day it dawned on me, when you're creative in your soul, this creative urge keeps knocking on the door. So I thought, well, if I've got to do this job, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go apply at Mattel Toys. What fun for me. I mean, I'm all into children and toys and children's books. And I lived in Southern California, and I thought, well, this is ideal. I'm here. So I simply walked into the Human Resources Department and applied and got a job as an executive secretary. Yeah, that was good. No competition there. That's something to remember. I tell all my students and my clients to remember that. Try to remember no competition, because that's the key. So we'll come back to that later. But at any rate, so I got the job I was the executive secretary to the director of doll art. And what an eye-opening experience that was for me. What I observed and discovered there was actually life-changing for me. My desk was in the middle of all of these artists around me in their cubicles. There was the right to my left. I'd just sit and watch. I would long to be in that cubicle at the drawing board where she was at the drawing table. And I watched her design a little doll that was, this is way back when. It was called Baby Beans. She was the one that came up with the whole concept. And then I knew all of them. I mean, I worked for all of them, and they were so awesome. I met the guy who did Larry the Lion. Some of you might remember that when you were a child. Little Larry the Lion was a stuffed animal that you pull the cord and he roars and he talks, and he was so sweet, so fun. So then I also met the guy who designed Barbie's van, and the woman who designed Barbie's hair, and the woman who designed Barbie's clothes. And they were all, I was in the nucleus of this, where the creative stuff happens, like the matrix, I would say, of where it all happens for Barbie and all these toys, all these dolls at Mattel. It was exciting for me, being a creative. And next to us was the doll engineering department, and next to them was the doll sculpting department. So I met all these amazing artists, sculptors, and all of these different people, and realized what I realized from being there. They were all completely confident. They didn't think that there wasn't any jobs, that there weren't any jobs out there. They had an insider information, I thought, that there were, in fact, jobs, if you need a job, for creatives. They earned great money. They were doing what they loved. And that was an eye-opening experience for me, because we're raised to believe that you can't make any money in art or in creativity. So that was wonderful. And then some of the other experiences I had there was one day I was walking down the hall, and walking toward me was Dr. Seuss. And he was this beautiful, tall man. He has tanned. He was wearing a white suit with his white hair and white goatee. He kind of looked like Colonel Sanders. And he just looked at me and smiled, this big, broad smile, and he kind of tilted his head to the side and nodded like a real gentleman, as he was. And I couldn't believe it. And then another day, Joanne Worley, the comedian, came in. I don't know why she was in, but I got to see her. She might have been lending her voice for a talking doll or a game. I don't know, but she was there. So this was the kind of experience I had. So that was my revelation, that a creative career is possible for anyone who pursues it. And my boss asked to see my work, and so I showed him, And he said, Maureen, I would hire you today, but you don't have the degree. And that's company policy. You have to have at least a bachelor's degree in art for me to hire you. So that was discouraging. I knew I couldn't go to school because I had to work full time. And that was a misunderstanding I had. I could have gone at night, but I just didn't realize it. So I ended up getting married and moving away. And so, I was removed from that whole environment. So more stalling happened. This is what we do. We keep shoving our creative ideas and our creative hopes and dreams into the background so then we can deal with real life, right? So after a few years of that, I got a divorce and I moved up to Northern California because I loved it up here. I was in Southern California at the time. And when I got up here, I thought, okay, my focus was back on me, and I was a single mom with 2 little kids and taking care of my kids. And I thought, that's it. I'm putting myself back through school. So where there's a will, there's a way, right? So what I did was I worked full time because I had to. I figured it out, and I went to school full time. And I put myself through school for 8 years total because I got several degrees. I got a couple of graduate, I just had this degree addiction, I guess. But I just wanted, you get into school and you realize you're introduced to so many wonderful things that you want to do that too. So especially if you're creative. So I picked up writing and I picked up humanities and art history and cultural history and of course my art. So I got some graduate degrees to be able to teach that. And then what happened was I loved my subjects and I was hired as a professor. So I worked as a professor for many years, close to 30. I think it was 26 or 30. I loved my subjects and I loved teaching. But what I did was, what I didn't realize I was actually doing, I became a professor in my field instead of being a working artist, which was my real dream. When I was a teenager, I wanted to be a Disney artist, right? It was so cool in those days because it was all done by hand, and they painted the cells, what they called cells, for each frame of the cartoon by hand. Just wanted to do that so bad, but I didn't think I was, good enough. That's what we do to ourselves. So Julia Cameron calls this being a shadow artist. You don't want to jump in the pool. You just want to stick your little toe in. You want to be around all the people hanging around the pool, but you don't want to dive in because of that lack of confidence or knowledge. I think it's just knowledge. So what I did was I went ahead and taught because I loved it. It was a steady job. I had my summers off with my kids. That was the main thing. But I did continue my craft sporadically until it returned so heavily that I had to start focusing on what I wanted to do creatively. And what happens is, I think, for all of us, is the knock on the door just keeps getting louder and louder until you finally listen and you take action on it. Excuse me. So I changed my focus and I changed my priorities and I pursued my dream that I started at 13. So the knock on the door got really loud enough to get me to kind of get into the steps of the pool instead of just diving in. But what happened was I was working on my craft, and then I thought, after many years of teaching, I thought I really want to make the leap. I want to quit teaching. I had had it with the system. That happens to all of us, no matter where you work. And I wanted to make money doing my art. And so here comes this naysayer again into our heads. Actually, in the lack of knowledge into our heads. I thought, well, the only way I could make money, which I knew better because I had been at Mattel, the only way I could make money to be on my own and have my own business is to create what's called collateral work for businesses. That's where you do their brochures and their business cards and, any of their whatever they need. And I hated it. That was not my gift. Logos and stuff, that's not my gift. But I did it. I pursued it. I had some clients. I hated it. And one day, and I was still teaching at the time, one weekend I went with my husband to a conference for his profession. And that was I loved doing that because that was my time to finally have quiet and be alone in a comfortable room where I could do what? Grade papers. So I was doing that, and I started getting restless, and I started looking out the window, and I thought, I just can't do this anymore. It's not what I'm supposed to be doing. So I walked over to the window. The hotel had a big, big window, and I looked out the window, and I looked up at the sky, and I asked the universe, I said, what can I do for my business today? An immediate answer popped in my head, and it said, go be a child. And I'm going, really? Really? And I started arguing with with these thoughts that were coming in my head. I said, right, that's going to help me help businesses, do their collateral work as if I'm being a child. And then it started getting louder. Go be a child. Go be a child. Go be a child. So I thought, okay. And you know what? It was so important to me that just getting out the door of the hotel room, Ariane, was so hard. Just getting out it was amazing how difficult it was to take that action, just to step out, so to speak. But I knew there was a toy store across the way that I had seen when my husband and I were walking around, and I wanted to go back and go in that store and just be a child. So here I had permission, actually a command, to go do that, and I was resisting. I was in such fear there was no logical reason for it. This is how our minds work, though. When we finally want to do it, there's that fear of actually taking that first step. But you have to do it anyway. So I it took me half an hour to get out of the room, and I went out and I went into that store. And I just turned, before I even got in the store, I turned and looked in the doorway, and here was this big barrel in the middle of the store full of these stuffed animals, and they were all the same little poodle. And I immediately, like a magnet, was just pulled to that because I had been working on a children's book about a poodle at home. That was my first desire, to do a book. And so, it wasn't my first desire. It was the one I was working on at the time. So I went and I looked at the doll, and it was so cute, and I picked it up, and this is the other weird thing. It was a really busy store, and I was the only one in there. And so I picked up the doll. Yeah, I picked up the doll, and the gal behind the counter was talking to me, and she was so sweet. And so I went over and talked to her, and I said, do you have a book for this doll? It has such character. And she said, no, we don't have a book for the doll. And I said, oh, it's too bad. And I wanted to buy it so bad. I'm rationalizing. Well, I need this for a model for my book. I'm sitting here, and I wouldn't let myself buy it. I put it back, and I thought to unconsciously, I was thinking, adults don't buy toys for themselves. Isn't that sad? It's what we do. So we just fight it, So I was talking to her, and she was telling me that her daughter was a graphic artist in San Francisco area. And so I said, oh, I really need her number, and please give her my number and tell her to call me because I need a graphic artist to do my brochures because I'm not a graphic person. So we did. This was in July. And so I left without my poodle, but I was so lifted up just by being in that beautiful, colorful, happy, positive environment. It was joyful. It was really joyful for me. So we went home, and then months later in November, I get a phone call, and it's this woman from behind the counter. And she says, I'm so glad you gave me your number for my daughter, because the company wants to do a children's book for this doll. And they asked me if I knew of anybody. Here I had already started it, right? And she asked me if I knew of anybody, and I said, yes, I do. And I gave them your name. And here's who you're supposed to call. Well, my goodness, it was one of the vice presidents of the company. And, that connection never would have happened. Had I not taken that very first, if I hadn't listened to what I thought was so silly to go be a child for that day. So I dumped the whole collateral business that was not me. And, and I started working with these people. And these people, here's what's interesting, Ariane, about the way things happen when you finally listen. And you can call it the law of attraction or whatever you want, but it's like these people were looking for me, and I was looking for them, right? Without even knowing it. It's like attracts like, like a magnet. And when I got to know these people, they were the most wonderful team of women, and we were all alike. That was the other bizarre thing that happened. And everybody was so excited about this book. And it was just like I was given free rein to write it, to illustrate it, to produce it. I said, you mean you want me to print it? My God, I didn't know anything about that. So I learned really quickly. And there were some real benefits to that too. So at any rate, we had this wonderful relationship for 11 years. They called me after, they loved the book. They kept thanking me for the book when they finally got the sample. And then a few months later, I think it was about 5 months later, they called me back. They said, based on the sales of the first book, we'd like you to do a second one. And I thought, first thing I thought to myself was, oh no, I don't have any stories left. I just told the story, oh my gosh, I got to write a sequel to this. So I came up with this. We ended up doing a series over an 11-year period.
How many?
4. And we actually had two more on the drawing board. But what happened was they closed the children's store. And because even though it was my copyright and my writing and my illustrating and my copyright, they had the trademark on the characters. And so I couldn't do the books on my own. So that was sad.
So you couldn't do it, yeah.
No, I couldn't do it. And I had a lot of their customers contacting me and saying, my daughter is, they took her kids. It became a habit for people to take their kids or get stuff for their kids every year, something different, with the Gigi and Jacques. And this one woman, well, more than one, but this one woman I remember vividly, she said, my 7-year-old was uncontrollable when I took her in and the store was gone. And she said, please, is there anything you can do? And I said, oh, that just broke my heart. Because, when you love something so much, you would do it for free. That's when you're in the right spot, but you don't do it for free. That's the other ticket. But at any rate, I couldn't help her. But I did book signings multiple times out of the year. Every year there was a new book coming out. And finally, after doing it for so many years, I had this grandmother walk up to me one time, and her granddaughter was with her, and she was grown. She was a teenager. And she said, we have to tell you, these were my granddaughter's favorite books when she was growing up. And they came over to meet me, and I signed a book for them. And those are the rewards that you're on the right track. What if I hadn't listened? Go be a child. What if I hadn't stepped out that door? Yeah, that's how it happens.
Yes, by following the intuition that sometimes knocks pretty loud, even if we don't want to listen.
Exactly. Exactly.
What a wonderful story. I love it. I love it. Now I have to really go check Gigi and Jack. And are you working on any artistic project right now?
I am. I'm working on, and I've been so busy, I keep putting it to the side, but now it's knocking on my head. I have several children's books that I'm working on. If I thought of, at different stages, I have at least 5 children's books I'm working on right now. But the next one in the queue is called Perfect Friends in Paris. And it's about 2 little girls that go to Paris together. And they literally paint the town. It's about creativity. The book is about creativity. So anyway, that's the next one.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Okay. And of course, I'll put Maureen's website in the show notes. And she's also doing a second episode with this podcast. So you can also check this out in the show notes. Thank you so much for telling your stories. Very inspiring about following our intuition.
Yep.
Really making the stepping out of our comfort zone. And when we feel that resistance, we have to do it. That's when we really have to do it, don't we?
Yes. Jump in the pool. Or at least step on the steps.
Exactly.
Wade in.
Yeah. And till the next episode. All right. Bye. I find Maureen's story so beautiful and inspirational. I love the little poodle story and the fact that she had to listen to her inner voice to step out of her comfort zone and out of that hotel room to actually get to live her dream. Be an author, a writer for children's book. To create more of what you want in your life and stop postponing, you can join me on a live online mastermind call on December 9, 2018. If you listen to this episode after December 9th, check on my website. I do regular mastermind calls. You can also find the link at www.arianeleanzaheinz.com/4. You will also find the show notes of this episode and the free 7 video series on how to shine with your voice. Did you like this episode? Subscribe, share, and give us a review on iTunes. Thank you. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to the Creator Mindset podcast at www.arianeleanzaheinz.com.